Good evening. It's my pleasure as the Mayor of the City of Vader to welcome all of you to participate and witness this regularly scheduled Vader City Council meeting, which I will officially call to order by that clock at 6:02 p.m. on this, the 24th day of May 2018. I will now proceed with our roll call.
Okay. Judy Costello. Here. Jason Daly.
Here.
Joe Shy.
Here.
Mike Parsons.
He's called and asked to be excused due to employment issue.
Do we as council vote on that, Mayor Kim?
If he's excused, there's no need. But you could vote to approve it as being excused, but normally it isn't necessary. If he's absent without an excuse, then a vote would take place. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Leona Sander Hunter. Here. And Mayor Smith.
also present. So we obviously have a quorum. We will now proceed with our Pledge of Allegiance. Would invite Mr. Shire.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. We will now proceed with the mayor's report. Are we okay?
We just had to help a council person.
Old people and ladies.
Okay, we won't get into specifics here.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. In the mayor's report, first item I felt it would be appropriate to brief everyone about is the paving project on our main street, on A Street, from the 506 to the north side of Warden Park. We met with the official contractors as well as with Devin Jackson this last Monday, and we were briefed on the timeline. I think Jill is handing out that timeline to all who may be interested in it. To note that it is scheduled to begin on June 11th, is the magic day. There will be some measuring and testing by the contracting crew, but hopefully it will be completed within 45 days. So it is going to impact the 4th of July in a small way, in as much as that area will be closed off. But the 4th of July activities, of course, is going to be at the school grounds anyway, so it should be minimal. But that's official. They are taking into careful consideration the necessary parking for the post office. Parking accommodations will be arranged for to the extent that they can. They'll do one half one time and the other half and allow public access somehow in that process. Let's see. And the parking for the church membership is being accommodated as well. So I think we've covered most of our bases. And the residents and the business owner, they're taking your parking needs into consideration as well. Hopefully working around it.
How are they handling the alley? That's going to be heavy traffic for the church. I know that's only one day a week or 2 days a week, but a lot of people go down the alley. I call it A Street Alley. I don't know what it is, but...
Well, they may happen, but I think there would be alternate accessibility there.
It's amazing how many people use the alley, the gravel, instead of going down the pavement. But
we'll monitor that. We have an observation.
It will not be closed all the way. It will always have at least one lane of traffic through it.
That's what they mentioned. It's always details, though. Would the council care to hear a comment? Yeah, go ahead.
Where will all the equipment and the people and the
Yeah.
employees park? Are they gonna be utilizing the open spaces?
Right now, their tentative plan is to use the sidewalk portion and the city's easement on the west side of A Street, north of the post office, but not on the private property.
North of the post office.
Right. Mhm.
So is
So-
it parking right where the sidewalk is?
Yes.
All their equipment will be on that sidewalk?
Yes, that's what they explained.
Real skinny vehicles?
Well, they're not that wide apparently. They've done careful measurements. So we'll see, and we'll watch. But we'll be monitoring the entire project from start to finish. Public Works employee is going to be kind of our eyes and ears on the ground, and will respond to questions and concerns. Yeah, don't hesitate to call into City Hall either.
The contractor is also very local in the Chehalis, Alaska area is what I understand. They said they may just take their equipment back home, that kind of stuff, like the weekends and things, and especially like around the holidays when they know there's gonna be a lot of traffic there.
Yeah, exactly.
May I ask Joe a quick question?
Sure.
Did you find out what the $11,000 was?
No.
Okay. No problem.
11,000.
There was a line item, removing a structure, it said on A Street for $11,000. And I was just curious, and I asked Joe, and he said he would get back to me, but,
Yeah, it's like obstructions and structures.
I'm pretty sure that was the bus stop, because they weren't, that bus covered bus
No.
thing, and they weren't sure how it was secured and all that stuff, so they estimated the worst case scenario. I'm thinking that that's what it was, but it's already been removed, so.
oh, okay. No, I was just curious. I didn't know there was any buildings on A Street that were leaving us. I was just,
I believe it
for
was the
$11,000, thought I would ask.
That's
I
worth
believe it was the
asking.
bus structure, yeah.
Yeah.
The bus stop.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, if that's clear, there will be more information in the newsletter and in the town crier as well.
That's my
So-
guess. So.
Mhm. All right, then with that, item number 2, I felt it might be appropriate to brief the council on the update involving the 706 property, the Rigsby property that's under legal proceedings. But in light of this document that I know each of you have received, I'm inclined to take the perspective that I will brief council members in private on that matter rather than in a public forum, especially the city council meeting. So that's the extent of my update on it, but I can fill you in outside of the confines of this meeting. So with that, the last item was an update on our preschool project that's just been dragging on. We did establish contact yesterday with Jim Mabbitt, and he has indicated that the city's done everything that we needed to do, and now they're in the final stages of complying with what was the nature
They
of
just have work to get, they just have to do the work. And there were 17 things that he
Yes.
said on our list of things that have to get done in order to complete to be able to get the certificate of occupancy.
Yes.
So.
So they're all on their side of the fence. So June 15th is the magic day. Of course, the obvious question is it going to be open after they've completed that? And right now, our thought is that it's not likely during the summer months. So, as we predicted, we'll clear all the hoops and hurdles and then get to wait until probably August for the school to officially open with students. But all of that having been said, in addition to that, Mr. Mabbitt did reaffirm their willingness to allow the city of Vader to use the public school property for our fireworks. So we have that continuing authorization, which is very helpful for our community. So that's the update. And if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me after council meeting or any time at your convenience. So that concludes the mayor's report. Any council members have items that you'd like to share with the public?
I do. DJ? No? Okay. Alrighty then. It's been brought to my attention this week that Vision for Vader is alive and well.
Yes.
And I was wondering, since one of the members of Vision for Vader is here, and he's going to do a report down on the special reports, if it would be okay if you took 2 seconds to give us an update on that?
Okay, well, that's it's a council report. You're expanding the.
Would you like to report now? Can he report now?
Well, that's not a community or community-sponsored organization,
Oh,
so it's not sponsored by the city.
okay, all right. I will bend his ear later.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to complain about the city's website again. I know that Leona took care of it. I was wondering maybe if Tammy could jump in there, or July is still on there. We still have an opening in the front office. I don't know if Tammy's position is available again, or if that's the old position from Diane, but we're still advertising, so I'm just throwing that out there. And then the other thing was there were a whole bunch of us missed the planning meeting. Not all of us go to the post office. Some get their mail at home. Not all of us come to City Hall. And I was questioning, could we maybe use the city reader board?
Yeah, I don't
It's
see why.
posted on the website when the
Right.
planning committee meeting dates are. You can look that up on your phone and at home. It's always on the same week. It's the third Thursday. every
I now
month.
have it from Scott.
Yeah.
But if we could use just one more resource, I was thinking if John wouldn't mind taking 10 minutes and go over and at least post park and planning are both of interest.
I don't see why we wouldn't. It seems
Okay.
fairly straightforward. Our objective is to ensure that the public
Right.
is aware of such things. So
Okay, I appreciate that. And that's my only
we
comment.
do have a comment.
It's pertaining to that subject.
Okay.
Not everybody's computer savvy or goes to the web for their information, so I agree with Judy's suggestion wholeheartedly for us old farts. I refuse to bow to the computer.
Fight the good fight.
I am.
Excellent. Okay, well, then we've resolved the concerns to the general good, the collective good. All right. Yes.
I have to be a little bit guilty on the whole webpage thing, because I just haven't been coming down on my scheduled Fridays and doing anything. So I apologize for that, I haven't been keeping up with it. There for a long time, I just didn't know what to say, so.
That tends to be a common problem.
Yeah.
It's easy to have energy and enthusiasm, but to maintain it over time is a challenge. But
So I do apologize for that, because I know I'm always welcome to come in on Fridays and do it, and I just haven't done it in a long time.
well,
Apology accepted.
I will get back on that, I promise. I know.
well, on that positive note, then let's proceed with the agenda approval. For the agenda for this evening's council meeting, we have council action.
I make a motion to approve,
I'd like to add something.
Oh, okay. Now is the perfect time.
Sorry to cut
we
you off.
meet.
Wanted to get you before you approved it, Judy. I'd like to add number 9, just a really quick paving project request or FYI or nod from the council. Anyway, talk about it when it gets down there.
So how do you classify that?
Paving project.
Add a brief discussion regarding the paving project.
Yes.
All right, now you can capture that.
I do.
You want to insert that?
Certainly. I make a motion to approve the meeting agenda for 5/24/2018, adding item number 9, paving project.
Okay. I've heard the motion submitted by Mrs. Costello to add item number 1 to our official agenda, which would relate to or be a brief discussion regarding the upcoming paving project. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Leona. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion is carried. All right, now the approval of our minutes from our previous City Council meeting and the City Council workshop, which were conducted on May 10th.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes for the city council workshop meeting on 5/10/2018 as written.
Okay. Heard the motion submitted by Mrs. Hunter to approve the minutes as written. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Costello. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay. Voucher approvals?
Just note your corrected voucher
Ah,
totals.
okay. Great. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers for the end of May 2018 of $24,754.98 for a May 2018 total of.
No, this is the.
I even wrote it down on here. I was still reading through my scribble. For the first half of May 2018 of $25,938.99, the end of May $24,733.42 for a May 2018 total of $50,672.41.
Okay, Mr. Shine submitted a motion to approve the vouchers, expenditures as read. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. Now, we are opportunity to hear a couple of, one report.
I'm not ready yet.
Okay. Mr. Gross is preparing himself.
If you could explain why the park board report isn't happening first.
Yeah, unfortunately, our park board had a scheduled meeting for this past Monday, but the chairperson had an unexpected, unanticipated crisis, if we refer to it as a crisis. So we didn't have a quorum because we're down 2 members of our park board. So there'll be no report this evening. But they are scheduling their next meeting on Monday.
No, Tuesday.
Oh, hey, Memorial Day is Monday, so it'll be Tuesday evening. That'll be at 6 p.m.
6 p.m. on Tuesday the 29th.
So with that, looks like Scott is ready. So we'll turn the microphone over to you.
Always ready. I come prepared most of the time. So the past 3 months, March, April, and May, we have tried to work on the comprehensive plan. In doing so, our last meeting we were supposed to have Matt Yoshi, from Lewis County was supposed to show up, and he apparently got caught up with his own work and wasn't able to make it. But he's supposed to come in and work with us and try and help us find some more money so that we can have money for the planner to help us get the plan finished up. I guess that leads me to something that with the park board and the challenges they're having and their portion of the comprehensive plan. Is there progress? Are they completed? Is anybody?
They're completed, to the best of my knowledge.
Is it?
Are you aware
What is it?
otherwise?
The
Park section.
section for
I
the
have
comprehensive plan?
not received that document yet.
Oh, you
It's-
have not?
No.
Well, Mr. Shy, do you happen to have inside information?
They have to have a quorum before they can approve something.
So they have not had the quorum? Because I thought that had been approved probably 2 months ago.
The document is not ready.
The document has not, a final version of the document has not been
Okay.
submitted to City Hall to
Right.
prepare yet to give to the rest of the
Who's on the park board?
park.
Well, I can tell you that we have one applicant ready for confirmation, but not at this evening's meeting. And we have another identified, and I just learned before this meeting, we have 2 other individuals in our community who were, we've already filled out a memo for council confirmation of a new member of the planning committee as well.
Thank you.
So we're on it. It's always a challenge, but it'll all be happening and official at our next council meeting.
Much appreciated.
One thing for the planning committee to note is that the park plan is not a required part of the plan, of the comprehensive plan. We can have it, but it's not required, so it's not, that shouldn't hold anything up.
Okay, so it's just money.
Yeah, when we want grants, we need to have it, but
Right.
the state doesn't require it as part, we do,
Right.
and we have it.
So
However, I would add here quickly for the council application, that since I go to the park board meetings, I think we ought to be cautious about proceeding without that, because there are funds available, and we found a replacement when we get to the point of confirming this person. Unlike Debbie Crumples, who we were excited about, who had a lot of grant writing experience. This person doesn't have as much as she has, but she's good for it. She's been involved in other fundraising grant projects before. And she's eager to see if she can sink her teeth into that challenge. So it would be incumbent upon us, I think, to make sure it's there.
I think it's important, I just wanted to note that that
Right.
isn't a requirement, but it is definitely recommended.
And once we submit it, are we not able to amend it?
I think
Make-
once a year you
once a
can
year.
do
Is
a
that what
comprehensive
it
plan
is?
amendment, I think that's what it is,
Okay.
if I understand
So-
correctly.
Yeah.
May I ask, how much more money do you need to finish your project?
I am not certain.
Well, I can give you a rough estimate, because I've been meeting with Matt Matayoshi, the Lewis County Economic Director, and he's very sensitive and supportive of the city of Vader, because we are part of the underdeveloped portion of southwest Lewis County. And he knows that we're outside the flood zone. So anything in this Vader-Wenlock area, he's very interested in doing what he can to help us. And I would hesitate to put a figure on it, but in my conversations with him, it would be substantial. And the amount that he would allocate for us, and it might cover the entire remaining cost. So
I think the question was how much cost is still left?
I prefer not to guess, but I know a rough estimate of what we're being charged. But the grant monies that Mr. Matayoshi is trying to allocate, he has to allocate it amongst the other cities in the Lewis
Right.
County, but he knows our need. So we'll see.
Did we?
I just want to clarify that.
Right.
Well, we went through 30,000 last year doing it. That's why I'm just like, whoa, pretty big document, detailed document.
I don't
I
think the
don't
whole
think it was
30,000 was for
30,000.
that. I think that might have been,
Right.
I'm not sure.
I think we might want to do
We
some
spent
research on
some
that.
additional monies on other things using the planner, other than that.
Oh,
Mhm.
so it wasn't just for
It wasn't
planning?
just for the comprehensive plan, it
Oh,
was
there were other
planning-
items, there were other, okay.
other planning items that he helped us with as well through the year. So if that was the total, which I don't recall, but if that was the total we spent on him, it wasn't all a significant portion was, but not all of it, so.
Okay. Yeah, all right, so,
I was going to ask Jill if you'd ever heard back from him and him coming to our next meeting.
No, I'm not confirming that yet.
Okay. Other than that, we've been discussing what you guys have been bringing up in your meetings, the accessory dwelling unit with recreational vehicles, the zoning changes for, what was it?
Home-based
For the
business.
home-based business.
Why are they changing the phone?
So for home-based businesses,
Change.
yes,
Are you changing
No.
Are you changing the zoning of the property, or are you just
No,
making it?
amending what's allowable in that zone.
I see.
Right.
I think it's the way you the terminology you use when you say rezoning, all of us think.
Oh, boy.
So,
Adding, amending the zoning to
Add.
allow,
It's easy.
and allow.
amend to allow,
Rezoning.
right?
I think so. I think
That's
that
an
sounds right.
elephant.
Yeah.
Other than that, that was it. Yeah, oh, the adjacent properties included in residential agricultural use, I guess, was brought up at one of your meetings as well. So we've tossed some things around and have our ideas, and we're just waiting to hear back from you folks
Okay.
after your discussions, and we'll continue to have ours, and we'll get it all put together, I'm sure.
Fantastic. Thank you for your service and the
Sure.
report.
Thank you very much, Scott.
You're quite welcome.
All right.
Anything else?
Thank you.
I like standing here, anybody?
That's fun. I've never heard that before. All right. Well, then, with that, that concludes our special reports. Now we'll proceed with our city business. Agenda items. Item number 1, council to consider action relating to ordinance 2018-04, our solid waste rate amendment. Straightforward action, I would hope.
I'll make the motion. I move to approve ordinance 2018-04, amending ordinance 2016-04, relating to the collection and disposal of solid waste in the city of Vader, updating fees and charges and making such rate increases effective on July 7th, 2018.
Oh, okay. You've heard the motion submitted by Mr. Shine to approve ordinance 2018-04. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. Do you have any other conversation, topics, or comments regarding that?
Did we cross out that big spot in the middle? Okay, that Jeff had us all confused on? Okay, all right. I'm all
The
good.
consumer index.
Yes, the consumer index. Okay, I'm all good then.
Okay, good.
And
Any other thoughts, comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Thank you. Council, now to consider Resolution 12-2018, the Jackson Civil Engineering Contract Amendment. Hope you had a chance to read this.
This was kind of the question I had at the last meeting, that we would not be dispersing any of the funds and everything and monitoring it. And this is am I on the right one?
I'm not sure.
12-2018.
Yeah, 12/2018.
Okay.
Additional service of $37,468 for fully funded, blah, 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 for them to monitor the entire project, for a project manager. Is that not what this is? Did I understand this incorrectly?
Yes, he will be, yeah. I think so. I think the way I'm understanding what you're saying. This is the engineer that has drawn up the design. He's going to be helping us to monitor the contractor's work.
Okay, that was my question last time.
Oh, I'm sorry, I must have misunderstood your question. I thought you were asking if we were going to be, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I know it. I thought she was asking that question too. If we were going to be paying each and every contractor that came down for what they did.
Well, I asked if there was a project manager for doing everything. That was my question.
Sorry, I must have misunderstood, but
Missed it.
it will be us working with Jackson Civil Engineering. They will be watching the man on the ground, which is the contractor, and then the contractor watches all of his subcontractors.
Right.
So the city will only be dealing with the engineer and the main contractor. That's
Okay, that was my question.
okay.
Okay.
And I see that this has an official TIB agreement in there, so I'm assuming this was a TIB requirement.
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
requirement from the TIB. And it's all in the grant funds,
Yeah.
it's all paid for.
their requirement, their money.
Yeah.
Yep.
And on the back back here, I've circled December the 31st of 2018 as a completion date. I'm going to assume that that means their closeout date, because they'll have to come back in and do all their paper closeout.
That's the closeout date, that's the drop dead date for TIB. We hope to have it all done way before
Okay,
then,
okay.
but that's the drop dead date for the TIB grant, if I understand it correctly.
We have a question.
Fire away. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
Who's gonna do this? I mean, you're adding this now, that the guy has to do it now. Who was planning to do it before? Nobody?
It's always been the plan that Jackson Civil Engineering would do it, but it wasn't TIB. The way they work, I guess you don't have it as part of the contract at the beginning. You have to add, I don't know why you have to add it later, but we could, if we wanted to, have our own city engineer that we have hired through Jerome Morissette. We could have them do this part of the work, but it doesn't make sense because they don't know the project. Devin knows the project, and so it makes more sense to have someone who already knows the project and knows what the plans are and not have to re-educate him. So it makes more sense, but why it has to be done this way, I believe it's the way the TIB sets it up. They don't want to approve the engineer to do work on the project until the design part is done, so it makes us treat those two separately, the design of the project and then the actual work on the project, physical, I can't think of what the right term is, but they treat them separately, so.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 12, 2018, approving the supplemental agreement to the consultant contract with Jackson Civil Engineering for construction phase engineering services, and authorize the mayor to execute the agreement substantially in the form presented in Exhibit 1.
Okay, Mr. Daly has submitted a motion to approve Resolution 12-2018 as read, as he noted. Do we have a second for that motion?
Second it.
Seconded by Mrs. Costello. Have any other council commentary? For a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that action. Okay, item number 3. In the past month or so, I'd heard from members of the council concerns about the courtesy notices, which the council had indicated they would like to initiate based on the experience we had last year, and with the courtesy letters that were carefully crafted, I think, by council members that were, I think, unanimously supported by the council. So there had been some question about the number of letters sent. So that prompted me to inquire about the separation of powers that are existent in the code cities such as ours, so that we might get some clarification amongst the council members. And so you received a document that I alluded to earlier that actually contains my answers to the council's questions relating to that. And in as much as it's a confidential attorney-client privilege communication, I don't think it's something that couldn't be shared in detail outside individually with it, but I would just defer to the contents of that document and then invite the council members to seek additional input from me at your convenience. So that is my kind of guarded response to council inquiries, if that helps. Okay. In the deliberations, though, and the the feedback we've gotten from those courtesy letters, which were intended to simply inform residents who we perceive may be out of compliance. We're just letting them know that we see potential non-compliance and invite their response to the community. There were some discussions that I've heard that would suggest that we modify the current courtesy letter that has been sent. So I think the council would like to discuss that in the contents of those. That was my understanding.
I think we did that last time.
Yeah, they wanted to change the
Oh.
notice, and so in your packet,
Okay.
there's the additional wording. Honestly, I didn't like the way the wording looked when I read it, but I couldn't come up with anything better, so if council has decided that it's okay, if it sounds okay to you, then, and you still want to include that as part of the courtesy notice.
Oh,
I thought the point was though to have them call the schedule, to have somebody come out and confirm that they have in fact completed the.
Right.
Right there.
yeah.
The highlighted part there is what's added.
Inspection to clear.
To notify the city that you have corrected the condition and are ready for an inspection to clear the notice. Or if they're not to that point within 14 days, to advise us of how you wish to proceed complying.
Well, that should do it then.
Do you think is that sufficient?
Well, inasmuch as I am the individual at this moment in time who's agreed in the spirit of community involvement and volunteerism to serve as the code enforcement officer, and yet which is under the umbrella of the mayor's responsibility to administer the codes and ordinances passed by the city council. I was kind of intrigued, since I wasn't able to be at the last two council meetings, to discover that you're adding verbiage that, from my perspective, changes it from a courtesy letter to more of an official notice that there's a violation, that you expect them to come in and notify the city that you've corrected whatever it was. Isn't that fly?
This was because we're gonna send them a second notice.
But
And, yeah,
I thought you were just going to let them know that there was a problem and you weren't going to mandate that they have to get out of their house and come and tell you how they've corrected it.
But the second letter was to go out in 2 weeks. But we don't want to send out a second letter to these people if they have in fact cleaned it up. But we had no means to check to make sure.
But this smacks of a notice of violation. Does it not?
Not a citation.
Yeah, it says,
Yeah, but still, you're expecting them to contact the city within 14 days of the date of this letter to notify the city you've corrected the condition. Well, how have you confirmed what the condition is?
Perhaps that might be a
Kind
thought.
of doing
No,
No,
both at the same time.
no.
yeah, insights?
well, is it better to send out the second letter if they have in fact already accomplished what we asked them to
I
do?
thought the second notice was to let them know that we still observe this potential condition, which we articulate, and then come up with a response after the second notice.
But we left no way to confirm whether they've done it or not.
But you're asking them to do something with your courtesy notice. How is that not a notice of violation?
We're politely asking them to clean up whatever they need to clean up without sending them a code enforcement. That's the way I understand it. I could be wrong.
Hey, I'll tell you that as the mayor, I'm just adding my fascinated perspective.
Well, I
We're
think we
massaging the
cleared-
notice of the courtesy notice.
Well, I think the first line clearly says that certain conditions at the property listed above may be in
I like all
violation.
that, right?
So we've already clearly thought that something was going on, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an interesting perspective you've brought to the table.
Well, yeah, since I'm the one who, at this moment in time,
Gets to do it, gets to
Of
explain
course.
it.
We had two comments.
She was first.
Okay, go ahead. Cindy.
Well, a condition is not a violation. A condition might be something they can explain. You know, that's not an old car, that's something that my husband wants to work on and make into something nice. Something that they might be able to quickly tell the city, you know, no, I'm not removing this car because it's a heritage vehicle or something.
Mhm.
So just having them call Jill up and say, I'm not gonna remove the car because it's a vintage car, that might resolve it right there. That doesn't mean that it's a violation.
Well, yeah, but let me read the next below the box. The city is requesting that you voluntarily resolve the possible conditions and hope that you accept this letter as an attempt to open communication between the city and yourself. Okay, I'm reading that.
Right.
Okay, I see that. Please contact the city within 14 days of the date of this letter to notify the city that you have corrected the conditions and are ready for an inspection to clear the notice. This is a courtesy letter. You're calling it a notice. Notice of what?
You could say, instead of corrected, maybe to discuss the condition? Or that
Yes.
you, instead of corrected?
Exactly.
Maybe it's just the terminology.
Yeah.
Well, I'm uncomfortable.
Right, with the terminology.
I hope you see what I'm referring to.
Right, because they may say, no, I'm not gonna remove the tall grass, I like
Yeah.
grass.
Right, he's got a reason for
You
it.
know?
Chris,
But
I got a goat.
and I would guarantee we'd hear that.
I got a goat. Pretty simple, thank you, bye.
Yeah, so, but here, so I'm uncomfortable with it when I saw it, and I'm just bringing it up as a matter of council consideration.
What do you think,
Well,
Leon? This was a thought you had too.
Normally, before the second notice would go out, would you be going to check it out first before the second
I
notice
would
goes
hope they
out?
would come in. They call,
Assuming this wasn't, that the new verbiage wasn't in there, what would you have expected to happen?
that they would call.
And if they didn't?
Like we did,
So-
like in the last.
Yeah, so I think where the breakdown is that with one of the courtesy notices we sent out, the person did call, and they said, oh, I didn't know this was a problem. Okay, I'll fix that, thank you.
Yeah.
And that was it. Well, we don't have any way of knowing if they actually did fix it.
Yeah.
Driving by, you can't tell. It
Oh.
looks the same.
Yeah, but see, I have a problem with that
So-
because we don't expect them to come after the first courtesy notice and say they fixed whatever it is. I would hope they would come in, we talk about what the problem is, confirm whether or not it's real, maybe they'd allow.
But I think ideally, we do want them to just say, oh, I didn't realize that was a problem.
Sure.
Oh, let me correct that, and I will, and then they do.
But
Or
that-
they don't, but we don't know.
Yeah, but
So how do we know what to do at that
Right, how are you
point?
aware of the problem in the first place, so,
yeah, well, yeah.
So I guess what do you think we should do at that point? What do you think would be a better way?
Okay, obviously, we all discovered last year that when we sent out notice of violation, we discovered the blowback on some individuals who obviously take exception to the city's efforts. Others comply. But now we're learning how the application of the notice of the courtesy notice. If I could make a point without interruption. So now we're discovering what the courtesy letters are soliciting from individuals. We've experimented with 3. We have good reason for submitting the 3. And now we're discovering the responsivity of the recipients of these courtesy letters. And I'm here to declare to you, from what I've discerned, that based on feedback I'm getting, that the council would prefer to put some teeth in the courtesy notice. But that's what I sense you're
It was
doing.
pretty much just,
We need some way to know.
and so we wouldn't double letter them if they didn't need
Right.
it, and then them.
Yeah, well, I like the
Yes.
suggestion that we change the word, that you've corrected the condition. And maybe just modify it to invite them to come establish contact with the city, to then set in motion steps with the spirit of cooperation. Now, how we determine whether or not that would come with part of the conversation, if they're willing to converse. But it depends on the case. So we're learning and we're experimenting, but I'm uncomfortable delivering this as a courtesy notice. But I'll do it if the council wants to. Just bear in mind, I'm just sharing that.
We didn't want teeth in this one.
No, I don't care what
I don't think
the,
you
what
wanted
the
to.
verbiage
No.
is. My point was, I came in and I asked you, like, okay, did the courtesy letters work? And, you know, of course, it was like, well, we got 2 phone calls and everything is fine and good. And then I came back and I said, okay, did everything get done? And Jill pointed out that we have no way of knowing that.
Well,
So
yeah,
I thought if
can
we just
have a-
added something in, we could
Sure, I understand
resolve
your
that
question.
before the second letter.
Yeah. I think we could have a way if people are willing to communicate. Yeah. And I don't want to delve into specifics with the last 3 because these are sensitive topics that are not appropriate to single out individuals. We know that.
So what would you prefer to have here? What is your suggestion?
Within 14 days of the date of this letter, please contact the city and in order to initiate the communications as to how we can help correct this potential situation.
That's the original letter. That's what the
Yeah.
original letter said. So what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is that the mayor, maybe you're suggesting that when we do get contact from them, that we take an additional step at that point and say, oh, you're willing to comply and make those changes, okay.
Mhm.
Are you saying at that point we would say,
Yes.
okay, can we come out and take a
Right.
look and make sure everything's
Yeah,
cool?
I think they would do that.
Instead of putting it in a letter.
Mhm. I think you'd get, you'd accomplish more in a courtesy notice with that sort of verbiage. Now, I can predict, however, as you can too, that you're always going to have a certain percentage of individuals who are just going to be offended by this courtesy notice, and they will lawyer up and they'll get the ACLU. However toothless a threat that is to this mayor, I could care less about the ACLU. But, and that's okay too. It's a free country. They can do what they want, and then the council can adapt and improvise depending on their response. So,
But if we can get 2 out of 3, that's a win.
it is, exactly, right. And we are, it is making a difference. I hope that you recognize and see that. Now, we've had, do we want to entertain 2 thoughts?
Certainly.
Okay?
It was,
Okay, Scott.
My thoughts are and they're in line with what you guys are saying. The initial communication, is it mentioning the specific potential violation in there?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, and it's been brought to the city's attention, you might be in potential violation of X code. Please contact us within 14 days to discuss the above matter.
Yeah, I like that.
And then kind of leave it at that. And then the second one that goes out should reference, in reference to the letter that we sent out X period of time. Don't have any teeth in it yet, because things happen, people forget.
Of course.
That's the way we have it set up
Yeah.
right now, but they were talking about adding some additional verbiage about getting an inspection. And that's what's being discussed at this point.
Yeah. You captured the essence of it. Thank
But
you.
yes, that's the process right now.
And
All right.
this is the proposed.
That's
Yes.
the proposed additional language.
Okay. Linda?
if I might say so, who says that person's got a problem we gotta address? Whoever did that in the beginning needs to go check if it was done.
Well, the comments come from the community. Yeah, right.
Okay, well then,
Sometimes.
whoever
Not always.
initiates
Not
the
always.
letter would have to run by and see if it's been done after 14.
Well, I think that's what we've been saying, to be the code
Well, she's
enforcement
saying there's no
official.
way of knowing.
Well,
And
part of
somebody
the,
from the city's gotta go and look.
part of the problem is that we can't, as a city, just go walk on someone's property without their permission.
Then
And
how
so
did you know there was a mess in the first place?
Okay. All
We
right.
weren't 100% sure, but it's a courtesy notice to say
Right.
there may be
Mhm.
But then when the people call and say, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were violating, then at that point, the mayor's saying, open up the conversation of, okay, if you're gonna correct it, thank you, we really appreciate that. Do you mind if I come by and just verify it so that I can scratch this off the list?
Well,
Exactly.
since you're the
So-
guy delivering the letter,
Mhm.
we want you to be comfortable.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. In the spirit of sociality and
Yes, I want you to be
sensitivity.
comfortable with that. I mean, you know.
We want to be courteous.
Right,
That's-
right.
This is, hopefully there are a few advantages living in a little village like this. You can't hide. So, thank you. Now, should we polish and or massage this and present it to the council at our next meeting? The world is not going to
Yes.
stop turning.
Well, did we not like the way it was before? The way it was before says exactly what you wanted it
Well,
to say.
If that, let me look at it. I haven't gone back and refreshed my memory on that. I was
Raise your
looking
hand.
at this.
He looks at me like he doesn't want me to talk sometimes.
Oh,
In the
okay.
middle of the top.
I think the history shows that the mayor is very observant,
I
and
know.
so let's please hold our comments before I get overly sensitive. So with that, would you like to hear the comment?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
I think you should remove this sentence here that states, the city is requesting that you voluntarily resolve the possible conditions. That puts a sense of you've done something wrong, rather than we think that you have, you're already basically telling them that they have, because you need to correct this. Well, wait, you thought I might have a problem, you want to talk to me about what might be a problem. So I think it's a little,
Okay, duly noted. Yeah,
Redundant.
yeah.
no, yeah, presumptive, yes.
Yes, and I would be sensitive to that as well. So,
Mayor?
yes, okay. I am pretty confident we can massage this where it'll be comfortable for.
I just don't think we need another meeting to do this. I think
Yeah.
the highlighted portion is what was added. You take that highlighted portion out, that's what the original letter said.
Yeah.
It says, contact the city within 14 days
Sure.
of the date of this letter to
Uh-huh.
advise us of how you wish to proceed in complying with the Vader City
I see.
Code. That's
Okay.
what the letter
Yeah.
said.
Although Mr. Gross's observation impacts the sentence before that. So,
And the
Right.
one after it.
yeah, I personally, I know it might not require another agenda item, but
If you're not okay with that language the way it was, then yeah, I think it does take another meeting, but.
okay. Thank you, though, for that thought. I personally will contemplate it, and I would conclude at this moment in time that we should bring it up at our next council. Does anyone have concern?
Well, I'll just say that I think I liked it better before the gray area was added,
Yeah,
because we were basically, you were giving them 2 weeks just to contact us,
yeah.
and then
But it's not though, it says
Oh,
to
excuse me,
comply.
this is,
Sorry.
it's not an open interrogative time.
yeah, please contact the city within 14 days of the letter to advise us on how to you wish to proceed in complying. So we weren't even pushing them to fix it quite yet,
Yeah.
and it was on their own timetable still. And then when we add this new verbiage, we're changing it to our timetable. Yeah,
Right.
it does get more directive, that's for sure.
So what you're saying is you're okay with
I'd rather
it?
not have
Just eliminate
that area, that in there.
Okay.
We want to change
Okay,
something
so the
else.
highlight goes out
Yeah, the
and
original,
leave it the way it was?
yeah, the original.
However, as Mr. Gross was noting,
Voluntarily
yeah,
resolved.
that is a presumption there. Okay. Would you care to hear another comment from the public?
Yes.
Council meeting?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Scott's right, in that one paragraph, you're telling him to do something, you're telling him to voluntarily do
Yes,
something.
that's
And
a
down
good point.
below, you're saying, call and tell us that you did it. So that's presuming that they agree with you already that there's a problem with that junk vehicle.
Right. I'd agree.
So,
And not only that, with this conversation, which is most helpful, we might want to modify the second courtesy notice to, ratchet it up, not put any teeth in it, but to courteously note the form of response we got in the first courtesy notice, which I could easily do and submit for your consideration at the next council meeting.
Do we
So-
even need that sentence in there, the city is requesting that you voluntarily resolve the possible condition and hope that you accept this letter as an attempt. I mean, even without that sentence there at all, it still reads really well with the last paragraph.
That's a good point.
It's kind of obvious what we want them to do. We don't need to tell them to voluntarily do something. It's not exactly voluntary when you tell them to do it,
That's a good point.
like they're saying it, so.
Well, we're learning from
Maybe if we
experience.
just took out the,
I like the city hopes that you accept this letter as an attempt to open communication between the city and yourself.
Oh,
That's what I was thinking too. Okay.
Like
That where
that's
I'm
smooth.
gonna take the middle of it out.
And that, so get rid of that.
the city hopes.
See, we can make this happen.
Look at that.
The city
We can make
hopes.
this happen.
Well, I can tell you that with that, if the council is comfortable with that, I am comfortable with the noted deletions and modifications. So we won't need to raise this at our next council meeting.
Okay. So we are taking out the section that says, is requesting that you voluntarily resolve the possible condition, and take that section out.
And add an S to hope.
And add an S to hopes. And then remove the highlighted sections and go back to the original verbiage for that paragraph.
Yes.
Okay. Easy enough.
You're golden.
Make sure I
Yeah,
clearly
that's good.
understand.
Yes,
Do
that's
we need
perfect.
a motion or of any sort? I wonder. Probably.
I don't know, it doesn't ever hurt to have a motion, but I don't know
Well,
that
let's
it's
have a
necessarily
motion.
required.
Can I ask one quick clarifying question on your letter?
Council, care to hear another quick clarifying comment? I see a no.
I'm gonna
no.
pass on this one. No, I'm teasing. Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Is there anything now in your first letter that is asking them to comply with anything other than contacting the city?
This is the first letter.
Is it? Yeah. That's it.
Understood, but you're making
Courtesy.
changes, you're removing things right now. Once you're all done doing that, is that final letter going to have them complying with a code or an ordinance? or-
Contact the city as it read.
Okay.
Just like that.
Yeah.
All we're asking them to do is contact
So
us.
this paragraph down here is going away,
It's
No,
got,
that paragraph is there, but the
I tell you-
highlighted section is removed.
because it says Vader City codes in that
It's all
paragraph.
Scott, in all due respect, I think that the council, and as much as it's their meeting, if I could get the attention of the public. This is the council's meeting. We can clarify your input, Scott,
They're not-
after the meeting is over. Okay.
I'll make a motion to remove the portion that says is requesting that you voluntarily resolve the possible conditions and add an S to hope, and to not add the gray verbiage that in the second paragraph.
Excellent. Okay, you've heard the motion submitted by Mr. Scheid to modify this initial courtesy letter as noted. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Daly, heard first. So do we have any additional thoughts or observations? And we did capture what you were doing.
I'm sorry, it was Jason that did the second?
Yes.
Okay.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Are there any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you.
Next.
Painfully
I don't
easy.
realize how hard it could be to be nice.
Oh, yeah.
This
Right.
is taking months just to be nice.
We learn how to be nice.
No public break.
Okay, and speaking of challenging, item C, discuss the code enforcement officer assignment. We had this conversation a couple of months ago as we reviewed our code enforcement efforts in 2017. And we discovered, and I agree completely, that we were only acting with the resources we had at the time, utilizing the services of our city clerk, which I have a feeling you would have discovered in researching in any other city in the state of Washington. You probably wouldn't have had your city clerk performing as a code enforcement officer. And so you modified that, and now the poor mayor, referring to myself, is embraced the responsibility to function as a code enforcement officer, and I feel probably confident that if we did research in the other cities in the state of Washington, there probably isn't a single mayor who's functioning as a code enforcement officer. And so this is why we have this for council deliberation. Discuss the code enforcement officer assignment. The mayor doesn't like to be a code enforcement officer any more than the city clerk did, and I'm sure the mayor is a frequent enough target of citizen ire, probably good reason at times. Why add to it? So, any council thoughts on the subject? And it didn't take long till we have. Council is very patient with the public. Because most council meetings would not have this level of public involvement.
They have
But
such great ideas,
they
though.
do, and so. But I just want to bring that to your attention in case it was lost on people that city council members in the city of Vader are very responsive to public input, and I think that's a positive. So there. With that, would you care to hear?
Yes.
Please go.
Why aren't you using Lewis County Sheriff for the code enforcement officer?
Yeah. Well, we've broached that question with them, and it falls outside of their contractual comfort zone. I mean, they're packing guns and they're enforcing criminal and civil liability laws. And code enforcement functions in a community such as ours, it isn't something that they readily embrace. So that's the answer that we have.
Okay. Wenlock and Toledo uses their handy-dandy little sheriffs. They're little police officers.
They might, yeah, but they're not county sheriffs.
No, obviously. But would we ever consider contracting with somebody kind of like the theory of a process server? Kind of
If
thought?
we includes the mayor, yeah, I'm open for anything.
I don't know that that's really the issue, and maybe I don't understand it all completely, but I'm thinking if the idea is just who's going to give them the notice, we mail the notices. It's certified mail. We don't need a police officer to mail the notice. The code enforcement officer needs to be the one who decides who
That's what we're
needs
discussing.
the letters more. And I don't know that a police officer knows any more about building codes than the city clerk does,
Or the mayor.
or the mayor.
Well,
You know what I'm saying? And maybe I'm not quite getting the whole picture, but that's what I'm thinking. That's the real issue is who's the person who gets to decide who sends the notices. Who we send the notices.
I think I cleared that up. I'm very comfortable with the information that was provided by our city attorney, which you've read. I have no problems about being the individual who fixes my name on courtesy notices and ensures that they're sent. So that's not the problem. It's the post notification and where you get to the notice of violation phase of this code enforcement process, and where you begin to engage in the legal entanglements that occur with a certain predictable percentage of residents. That's what I think we're referring to, not necessarily the identification of it and the mailing. It's the subsequent checking, verifying that they're in compliance. Does that help? Okay.
Yeah. Some of it has to be done by like a building official.
Right.
Depending on what the violation is. If it's a building, like something to do with actually building a building or a building that's falling over, that has to be looked at
Connecting to utilities.
by somebody who is, well, even connection to utilities doesn't necessarily have to be done by a building official, but as far as if a structure is sound, if that's the concern, or if there's construction going on or something, I would think that would have to be verified by a building official who knows building, the actual building. But then we've got this other stuff that's, is your RV plugged into the water and sewer, or is your grass overgrown? A building official with, that kind of knowledge isn't necessarily required to tell if the grass is too long or if something's parked
Sure,
where it's not
but
supposed to be
you're gonna
parked.
have a big hat.
So,
if you're that
so
official.
yeah,
So-
I mean,
so
even
what
if we
is-
had a building official, they might, if they aren't, even if we had a code enforcement officer, if they're not a building official, they might have to call the building official to get help with certain code enforcement.
We do have
Decisions.
an inspector.
So what does
Which we
Mr.
do
Townsend do?
He's a building inspector, and he
Yeah.
could function in some capacity in that regard, as you're indicating.
However,
He requires us to get out our very large checkbook. And there's my problem with Mr. Townsend, is the checkbook and the travel and the whole thing.
Well, for sure.
So, what other person, do you have any person, a hat in mind?
This is for the council to decide.
Well,
This is the
Ray,
legislature.
Leon, do you want to do it?
So I know,
did you read that memo you got? Because it specifically said,
so I know it's item number 4, the building official, the replacement building official. But I was hoping that along with the replacement building official, that we would get our code enforcement issues taken care
our
of.
building official has agreed to
Yeah.
do this work, it's just nobody wants to pay him to do it,
Yeah.
even though he's agreed to do it at a reduced rate.
Yes,
It's not all.
I think that's part of the conversation. And we'll be addressing the.
I don't know who you're gonna get to do it for free. If that's what we're looking for,
Right.
someone who's willing to take the abuse of being the building or the code enforcement officer for free, I don't know how that's gonna.
That's the real upshot of this conversation. I don't think any of you want to do that. I don't. And so a building inspector has indicated he would be willing to do it. But as Joe's indicating, we have an update on our efforts to replace our current building official.
Could we jump down to item number 4 and include
We
it in
can.
this?
Yeah, for sure.
Since this may be a key?
Yeah, let's segue and we'll combine. I did reach out and spoke to Trent Lougheed with Lewis County. And that was 2.5 weeks ago. He said that he was pleased to report that they have completed, which was the reason why.
Is Lewis County or Chehalis? I'm sorry.
Chehalis.
Chehalis.
What did I say?
Lewis County.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no. Yeah, he's with the city of Chehalis. They have successfully completed the interlocal agreement in which now Lewis County is going to utilize the building inspection services of the city of Chehalis. And Trent has said from months ago that if they can accomplish that agreement, they're willing to extend their services to any little community like ours that want to reach out and use their services. It's an economy of scale concept. So he was pleased to report that. He said, however, what I'm going to ask the city of Vader is to, again, continue to be patient, give me 30 days to see just what sort of request load emerges as they're applying their interlocal agreement. They don't know. They know the personnel they've got, and they know the current workload that they've got. So he's asked for 30 days. We're about, let's go halfway through that 30-day time period. He's going to get back with us. And so I also asked him, now what will your fees be? Obviously, that's the $64,000 question. And he said, well, Mayor, that's a very good question. We haven't really decided yet because we want to determine the workload, the number of personnel, and so forth and so on. So, but when I get back with you in a month, we'll be able to get in a little greater detail what the costs might be, because we have to know that, right? And how available they'll be for us. I'm 99% very confident that they're going to allow us to embrace the concept, and I'm not 99% confident that it's going to be in the price range that will allow this council to say, there's our solution. So that's where we're at. We're close to knowing if the Chehalis individuals are a feasible option for us.
Cool.
But it's 50-50 at this moment in time.
So do we need to continue to research this and
I think we
reach
do.
out?
I think what I would like to know is that the council is sensitive to that situation. I know you are. You're sensitive enough to know now that the mayor is knows that down the road, long term, you don't want the mayor or the city clerk or a city council member or a good friendly neighbor who's willing to let someone know that you're out of compliance. It doesn't work that way in the community. So it's the responsibility we embrace when we are a code city. And I think that there is a solution out there. So there. I think, okay. Go ahead.
Did you check with Napa Vine, Winlock, or Castle Rock? Is Shayla the only person you called?
No, we contacted others. I don't remember the response to it, but
The mayor in Winlock was very open to it. So was Napa Vine to giving you a proposal. So I'm wondering why you don't have something to report from them.
yeah. Did you recall the feedback we got from it?
Castle Rock made a suggestion that we use this really,
An 87-year-old
80-year-old,
man
yeah.
who's retired.
that we could possibly use him. I remember that from Castle Rock. My understanding is that Winlock is using Napa Vine, so.
No, they're not. Winlock has their own now, and I just talked to them recently, and Napa Vine has their own, and they were both very open to sharing or doing some kind of proposal for the city of Vader to do a two-way or three-way or.
Well, maybe it's time to revisit
If my
that.
memory
Yeah.
if my memory is correct, when we checked with Napa Vine before, they were not interested in doing the code enforcement
Yeah.
aspect of it, so that's why we did never look into it any further. But this was a couple of years ago. This was before Les Townsend even, so that's my memory of that one. I don't know I thought Winlock was just signed again with Napa Vine, so if they have somebody different, then
Yeah,
I'm not
well,
aware of
mayor.
us checking with.
Yeah. I've spoken with Winlock Mayor a number of times on a number of other issues that I will be bringing to the council's attention here in the very near future. It wouldn't be troublesome at all to reach out to him. Maybe that will be something to look into. So.
That way you have more to choose from than
Yeah.
just one option.
Well, sure. I mean, that's-
Well,
but
and anybody that we hire as a building inspector, building official, if we want them to do code enforcement, they're not gonna do it for free.
Right.
We're gonna have to pay them,
We embrace
so.
that. I think there's money in the budget to do it because we control how many we're going to do, right?
And if they don't have to come from so far away, hopefully it would be less
Yeah.
expensive.
Maybe less,
Agreed.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I still like the idea of the retired contractor.
Hey,
I think that might be a thought for,
I am totally open to
Okay.
such council input. And it is in your legislative and financial control. So with that, okay. Any other discussion? And we will check into other continuing effort. And we have 2 weeks or so before we get back with Ted Logie. So forth. All right. We've done number 4. So now let's jump to number 5.
oh yes, talk about Scott again.
Mayoral response to questions about the roles and responsibilities of planning committee. Yeah, there were
Yeah,
some
with
questions. Yes. What are
When
some
I
of the
came,
questions?
when I moved to Vader, I sat right here,
Mhm.
and I had to drive all the way up from Oregon 3 different occasions. And one was to talk to the planning committee to let them know what my house size was and how tall it was and da-da-da-da. And 2 other meetings was to come to the council and get approval. Since Bob Armstrong served on the planning, I don't ever see planning coming involved in that kind of thing, and I was just questioning, because usually they're the runners that go out and get all the information and bring it to council and then do the recommendation to council, and then council says, yeah, that fence is perfect or whatever. So I was just questioning why we're not using our wonderful planning folks anymore like we used to.
Well,
Busy, okay.
Well, that's, I think we are using them, but we've hired a professional planner. Gary Cooper is, and he is actually engaging in the professional needs that we have in the planning department. And so he calls meetings and ensures that there are items on the agenda that are appropriate. And so I can tell you, when I first moved here, which was just before you got here,
Right.
we built our home here, and I was my first service in this community was on the planning committee. And then I became the chairman of the planning committee. And when I moved into this assignment, Robert Armstrong
Right.
took my place.
Right.
And I can tell you that a planning committee, you have to have one if you're going to be a code city. And back in those days, we didn't have a professional planner. And I can guarantee you that there wasn't a single person on that planning committee that knew diddly squat about what planners were supposed to be doing. So, and we were all volunteers.
I think I was that stupid, but you seem to think you were pretty smart.
Yeah, well, we were smart enough to fight off some lawsuits, which I'm sure you recall, on F Street, right? WAPO, since I went out as the chairman of our planning committee and did defend this city, and we overcame the lawsuits which emerged, which prompted us to want to get a professional planner, because as intelligent as you were, I know that we weren't professional planners. We
getting testy.
Well, yeah, because I know the history and I know the facts. The good-hearted people on the planning committee were like myself. And they were volunteers who were, we were out of our league when it came to defending ourselves with attorneys. And that's how we ended up with Carol Morris, the preeminent land use attorney in the state of Washington, representing our city for 4 years. And she saved our bacon on a number of lawsuits. One of which involves your property, if you recall that. It was. I can share the drama that took place for the original owners of that. Yeah. So this is high stakes. No, it wasn't you. It was your property. So
advancing to a planner, a professional planner.
You have to have it. And I can assure you, for the 10 years of my tenure as mayor, we did not have much need, not any, but because we had a moratorium on our construction, because of our waste treatment plant and our water plant, if you recall. And so, but now we don't have that. And so we have it's a trickle, but it's increasing. Right now, I think we have more potential building going on than Toledo, and maybe close to Winlock, as I talk to the mayors in our monthly mayors meeting. Things are changing. We need to have somebody who knows the ins and outs of land use and planning subtleties, and you can't have a city without a planning community. So that's where we're at, and I'm very pleased with the people who are serving on our planning committee.
I am too. I was just questioning how this all came about.
That's the rough history. And,
that we had decided as a city we needed to go into a professional planner, even though we do. Thank you, Scott, for being on the planning.
He's part-time, of course, under contract, but I think that we can justify every dollar.
And what is his location?
He has an office now they've just built one between Centralia and Chehalis.
Oh, okay.
So, but hey.
Well, that was my question. I was the questioner.
That's what council members are supposed to do. We have a comment based on this. Yes.
I thought at one point in time, didn't it change from what the planning committee, or what their responsibilities were? Because there was, I thought I read something somewhere way back when they were doing different things and were we're doing now.
Yeah, well, a lot of the city building codes have changed, and we've embraced and adopted the International Building Code, which the state of Washington uses, and that's changed the approach. Plus, we were sending all of our final building permit inspections to Lewis County. So our residents would pay the city permit fees, and then you'd have to turn around and pay the Lewis County fees, which was a thorn in the side of at least 51% of the residents of Vader, I can tell you, because that was a fight that took years to resolve, and it was complicated. So when we finally divested ourselves of Lewis County permit involvement, we essentially, realistically, cut the costs. The residents probably don't appreciate that, but we've accomplished that because we've gotten a professional planner, and we've got our building inspector who goes out and ensures that the permits are in compliance. Does that make sense? So we've become more of an effective, self-sustaining code city. Obviously, we don't have full-time professionals on staff, but and a lot of little cities like ours don't have the resources because we've managed to develop relationships, and we've worked in partnership with other communities. We used to have a chief of police in this community. He came on board, and he did a wonderful job for 4 years, and then we engaged in an interlocal agreement with Toledo, and then we went with Winlock, and then we finally got the Lewis County Sheriff's Department, and we've found stability, but we've cut $120,000 off of our city budget by eliminating our chief of police force. So this whole city has, for the past 12 years, transformed itself from a good old boy behind the barn and watch you dig it that deep and we'll put that pipe in there type of thing to somewhat compliance. We've still got growing pains. But there, thank you for listening. That's my long answer.
Thank you very much for that. Yes?
I take exception to that. This city was not a pack of hicks, and it wasn't done a good old boy behind the barn before you got here, Mr. Smith. And before you interrupt me, it was still functioning, and it was still doing okay. So
I am
please
going
don't refer
to,
that.
because
Please don't refer to that as a
you will
good old boy
refrain
behind
from
the back.
making derogatory comments about a member, an elected official in this community.
I said, I did not make a derogatory report about
You
I said,
indicated
please
that I was going to
refer-
cut you off, and I'm
Please
going
do
to
not
do that
refer-
because I consider your comments being appropriate for a public city
No,
council
it's not.
meeting.
Just don't refer to the people before you as
I will invite you to
hicks.
cease and desist a third time. If it goes beyond a third time, we will invite you to leave. So I appreciate your comments, but they are out of line and inappropriate. Thank you. So with that, I won't dignify her comments or response.
We're talking in
Okay.
3 minutes. But we can't interrupt.
Perfect. Good work. Very good. So with that, I hope I've addressed your concerns on that particular agenda item. Okay? So would the council care to pursue any additional comment on agenda item number 4 or 5? Okay. Let's move on to number 6. Update on planning for the 4th of July celebration. Okay. I talked with Mike Parsons earlier today, and he gave me a full briefing on the events that are emerging for the 4th of July. And I was most impressed with the progress that's being made. I think he probably briefed you on that at our last council meeting. But I can tell you that it's a green light across the board. He's taken care of all the insurance. He's got a full $5 million insurance coverage for $250 as opposed to $1,900 that the city paid last year, which was extraordinary. We've got official authorization to use the school property. He's made arrangements to have a fire truck on scene with Rex Hancock from Fire District 20. He's gotten approval to put a 6x12 banner advertising the event on I-5 as their off-ramp to the city of Vader. He's gotten approval to put flags on all of the poles on 506. He'll have a banner that's been approved by PUD to extend across 506 before the event. He's got retailers that are planning on coming. You'll have local vendors charge a $10 fee, $50 for out of. He's got a committee that is in place that's helping with all of this. So all within the $3,500 budget. He's got a licensed pyrotechnician who's has got all the fireworks allocated, who's going to set them up electrically and so that he'll fire with a push of a button. And it'll last 35 minutes instead of 45 minutes, and it'll be a very dramatic and impressive thing. So it'll be fully electronic. You'll just push the button. There'll be no delays between any of the fireworks. So that's Mike's report. He invited me to share that with the council. So I could not be more impressed with the unexpected, unanticipated outreach and involvement of residents who stepped up to the plate and ensured that the 4th of July celebration will be, it'll knock your socks off, is what I'm predicting. So that's my update. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns?
I've made my comment a couple times. I'm disappointed that this was taken over and Reggie was booted to the side of the...
Reggie, I'm the last individual from representing the city of Vader. I went to his house, which I've done for the
I'm
previous
disappointed
3
he
years.
left because he wanted to talk tonight.
I'm sure.
I am too, and then he left, 'cause I thought he wanted
He
to
came
talk too.
specifically
He
to talk, and I'm
That's what I
disappointed
understood.
that he left.
It is too bad.
So I will leave my comment.
Let me tell you, since I am the individual who carries out the wishes of the council, and you approved $3,500 for expenditure for the 4th of July celebration sponsored by the city of Vader. I went there, as I've done the previous 3 years, and it was not the city of, I will clarify, in as much as I was the one who was there talking to him, representing this community. Reggie Smith was not booted off of 4th of July event. Reggie Smith decided in the course of that conversation that he did not want to participate anymore of his own free will and choice. And I stood there in his front lawn as he went in the house shouting at me at the top of his voice.
Okay.
So let the record show that he was given an opportunity, and we wanted him, we've supported him in the past. So that is the official record that I would attest to. So with that, any other thoughts or concerns? And I am sorry that Reggie feels the way he does. I would add that he's free to shoot his fireworks off. I don't sense the city is going to prevent him from doing that. He can do it. It might make it even more dramatic to have a two-prong program if you'd like to, but the city, there's no reason to discourage or encourage him. It's a private, free thing he can do if he wants to. However, the location is going to have to be monitored because the street is going to be under repair at the time, and it's possible that there will be equipment of flammable materials there on site. They may move it, and they understand, we've talked to them about the possibility that there'll be fireworks in that location by a resident or two, who knows. But but we need to take that under careful advisement. There. With that, any other thoughts? Okay, then item number 7. Continued discussion on home-based business regulations. I will turn that over to council because I have not participated in that conversation, and I'll just entertain your input.
Okay, Donna and I were on a committee with a couple other people that didn't come to the meeting. So Donna has a
5-second report of what she came up with briefly, just to kind of let the rest of the council know the information that she retrieved.
Okay, well, we did get the ordinances from Winlock, Nappaline, Toledo, Pierce County, and Vancouver. There are good examples of home-based businesses in there, but very simple, does not have to be complicated. There doesn't need to be any zoning changes unless somebody plans on building a big store to sell their things out of, which I definitely would not want to be in the middle of that commercial zone. Anyway, we need to make a new list of what's allowed already in our list of businesses, which would totally be changed anyway if you go for any of these. In our ordinance, that one is really weird. I hope it goes away because it's just too weird. There's wording in there called the city may impose. Well, what does may impose mean? And then they need to define what the words are, certain conditions and subject to conditions. So that sounds like to me in our own ordinance that's individuals' interpretation of what they want to impose. I think there should be a list if we do this of conditions, but otherwise, if we have another one of those little meetings that we had, workshops, and maybe everybody could have a copy of these ordinances to look over. Toledo's is great because theirs is really simple, very easy. It just everything I've looked at is just easy. It doesn't have to be complicated, depending on what our city wants. I mean, certainly there are regulations, but they're definitely not difficult and certainly not unattainable. So I think it would be a good thing to do, really.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I don't know that we need another workshop to do that. Is there any way that we can get copies of those from you?
You can get copies of them, but you're going to have to go through all of these workshops to decide to pick and choose what's going to be for Vader. I mean, you're going to have to make an ordinance for this.
Have to revise
The whole thing has to
the
be
ordinance
revised.
because we need to put in there
I'd be glad to make you copies of them, so Jason's not wrong.
hazardous
If you want.
materials.
And anybody else that wants
But those
copies
were,
of these.
there were tons of nice, good things in all of them.
Yeah, it's things you can pick out from each and every one of them, but I just kind of like Toledo's as a starting point because theirs is really easy and it's very, understandable, nothing complicated, so.
And currently, when Steve wants to come in and opened up his, kite shop or whatever, he just comes in and he says, "Hi, I'm going to open up a business at my house," fills out an application, gives the city the $50, and then I'm assuming that they make a phone call and say, "Steve, are you going to be making these at your house? Are you going to be buying them from whatever? And if so, blah, 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 blah," and then you just issue him a business license for his home? Is that the way that works?
Are you talking about once this update gets done?
No,
or
I
are
mean,
you
no,
talking
no,
right now?
currently,
Currently
if,
right now?
if Steve wanted to just open up a home-based business.
More or less, yeah, we just make sure that it's not something that's like a big manufacturing type
Chemicals
situation,
or-
right? That would trigger other regulations that are beyond what we have. And then we verify with the state that they have a state business license before we issue ours.
See, that just seems so simple, so I question why we're going through all of these hoops.
I think.
For neighbors don't want 6
Right.
cars pulled up in front of their neighbor's house all day long and traffic and a
It's
sign
gotta be
10 feet by
kind of-
40
Yeah,
feet.
you
Yeah.
can't have a
Lighting up in the
retail.
middle of the night, or
Remember Doug's 24-hour drive-through
Pepper Shack?
Pepper Shack? Remember?
Yeah.
We didn't want that?
Yeah.
Right now,
Oh,
right
yes.
now, my understanding is it doesn't allow for that retail business to come to your house. you can sell over the internet, or you can mail, or you can go out, take your product and go somewhere else and set up, a fair or something, but you can't like actually sell out of your house. And I think with my understanding, what Mr. Parsons is talking about is being able to sell out of your house, but also taking it a step further than that and making it kind of an identity for the community. I think that's something that you had talked about, and so in doing so, that's why we want to make sure the regulations are very clear as to what
They're very
what is
clear and they're
allowed.
very easy. There are restrictions about environmental things,
Okay.
Signage and square footage.
well, the signage and square footage, that's regulated in a percentage of your house that you can use. Most of it is, you can't be more than 25%. I think one city actually, there's a difference between cottage and home-based business. And this one ordinance that I read, in their cottage industry, they allow 1,000 feet. I don't know how big your house has to be, but, and the others are mostly just no more than like 25% or 500 square feet of your home. But if you can have accessory building to do that out of, and parking is restricted, traffic, you don't want a bunch of traffic and stuff like that. So, but they're all very simple, and they're confined to people's homes. So, and if people want to do internet, or not everybody's going to have people come into their house to get their products. I think it's great if you stay within those little easy perimeters to keep it small and not get crazy.
Good. Do you want to comment?
I think from an administrative point of view, what we need, all we would need to be able to implement something like this is to know what exactly regulations you guys want. So I'm thinking if you guys like Toledo's more or less, maybe if someone could put together, Toledo's, and then whatever changes or additions or subtractions that you want to make, then we can take that written list and give that to the city attorney so she can write it up to fit in our code where it's supposed to go. with those.
I think everybody needs to see all of these.
Sure.
Because I like Toledo's because it's very simple, but I like some of the stuff in some of the other towns too that could be added or taken away. It's just you guys need to see all of this, and you guys need to make the ordinance.
The other
The
comment?
city attorney can look
Other
at it.
comment?
Just a question. Is
Question?
this something that would come up for public
yeah.
comment at some point in time?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
It'd be required to have a public hearing.
Would that council or planning committee?
That would be a planning committee public hearing. Yeah, we would, once councils has the ordinance together and says, okay, this is what we're proposing, then it has to go before the planning committee and a public hearing. And it's got to go to the Department of Commerce at the state. It's got to go through all those steps before it can get approved.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
So if it's
Yeah.
okay, I'll make you guys copies of all these ordinances and I'll bring them up here to the office.
Great.
And you can get them out of your box or whatever, that's okay, I'll do that. I'll do that tomorrow.
if you want to just leave them with me, I'd be happy to make the copies before you leave.
Okay.
And then I can give you back to you.
So that will be our
Yeah,
strategy.
we'll coordinate. Perfect.
Well, thank you. That's
Thank you, Donna.
Can I get a copy?
very helpful.
Yep.
Okay, any other thoughts on that particular agenda item? Appreciate that. All right, then let's proceed with item number 8. Continued discussion on RV used as accessory dwelling units. Now, I understand this was a continuation of a discussion from the previous council meeting or two on what constitutes an accessory dwelling unit. Is that the research that? What it is? Okay, I'll turn that over to the council.
We were
This is
talking
extended
about,
living.
yeah, for an extended living for
Senior family
family members or.
Yes.
And they turned it into an accessory dwelling unit.
Well, an accessory dwelling unit, I think, is allowed in our city code but not an RV as an accessory dwelling unit, if I'm remembering
Right.
correctly. And so one of the things council asked is that they wanted to get a copy of what Lewis County's, you guys gave me the code number, so I pulled it up and gave you the whole section about what the county says is okay as an accessory dwelling unit.
So have you had a chance to read this? Aye?
Well, I think that our community cannot basically afford to go buy a $60,000 tiny home to put for their family member. That's why the RVs are still, the travel trailers, the whatevers, they're still involved in this. And I totally understand Jason's point. Jason made a comment that, these get old, they get blue tarp, they get raggedy looking, and I understand that.
They go from the mom's elderly person to the grandkids
Kids
hanging
do,
out. or-
exactly. Well, my thought would be a permitting scenario where they come in every year with, say, mom needs to live at my house, and that I would come in every year and say, here's where mom lives. You're all welcome to come over, check it out. I'm happy to do that, and then I pay a permit fee of whatever we decide on.
Processing fee, yeah.
Processing fee or something like that, but it's a yearly thing. It's not something that's just extended or haphazardly thrown out there. And I think,
I think we also talked about how the dwelling should be a certain age, like we do with the mobile homes that come in. Certain age before,
well, standard or whatever.
Well,
I don't know.
Yeah,
You get
it's
an age.
fine.
Well, you get an age.
Used RVs, they dilapidate just as fast as a mobile
I
home.
know, but Jess's was $35,000 for heaven's sakes. I mean,
I know the refurbished RVs that are older RVs, but they've been refurbished and are really nice inside might be better than a 5-year-old one that hasn't been taken care of.
right.
so.
I think it might be. I don't know.
Note that we have
He's
somebody
busy
with comment.
tonight, isn't he?
yeah, I know, well, we
Got
were having the
experience.
same discussion, the same things were coming up in our meeting.
Well, share.
Permit idea, the idea that came up in our meeting was 10% of whatever the actual property taxes for the property as a permit fee for that 1 year. So if it's $800 a year in property tax for that property, it's $80 for their accessory dwelling unit for the year. Just a suggestion, of course. With regards, I have the same thing, 10 years or newer, but then they can still become dilapidated if they're not kept up. So it would have to be more of a in good repair, and you'd have to have a I don't know how you would put it, but you'd have to have it spelled out as to what would be considered a good repair.
Right.
No leaks,
I mean, we already have something in our codes to say no tarp garages, so you can't.
Right, so you just would want to have something along those lines that narrowed that down. And then you've got your challenges with your utility hookups and those being done correctly with your electrical, because RVs run off of different amperage and they need special plugs. Those need to be done professionally. They should be done professionally by a licensed electrical company. And there's the sewer is the bigger challenge that you're going to have, because where are they going to dump their sewers?
Well, if they're going to dump it in the sewer they're already paid for.
How are they
It's their
connecting?
mama.
How are they connecting to that though?
Plumber?
An extension
Plumber
of the
comes and
sewer
does
line would require a side sewer permit.
Right, so then you need to have that done and done professionally.
And I like here how it says that the dwelling must use the same driveway. It's one of the things that the county puts in there, so you can't like stick it out back and pour 4 loads of gravel around your house, turns it into a driveway.
Yeah. We do have another comment from another member.
Well, if you go with everything that the planning committee has come up, you're making it cost prohibitive for that grandma who can't afford to live on her own. If you go, just use my dad's as an example, his taxes are like $3,600 a year. 10%, now you're paying $360 a year, plus you gotta have an electrician come plug the thing in. I could plug in our RV. And you want it 10 years or newer, well, shoot, I mean, if.
I said it should be done, but it would need to be inspected at least to make sure that it's done to code, you know.
So now you've got an electrician, and everybody knows, Mrs. Costello's too expensive for that sort of thing. And, then we've got a plumber to plug, do the RV dump thing. I mean, you're now,
I don't know, we're not supposed to have discussions, but my perfect example I have is something I personally came upon was an RV that had a leaky drain thing sitting behind somebody's garage, and it's just gently seeping into the ground.
No inspection done.
Thank you.
Well, we're still in the brainstorming phase here. We haven't decided on anything yet.
We're just throwing a bunch of stuff out.
Here's an idea.
That input though.
I don't want them in the front of the house.
No front.
I want them no closer than, if you've got the front of the house facing the street, alongside or behind. I don't want them closer than the front of the house. So similar
Right
to
on the side of the street.
Well, similar to your neighbor there,
So when you step out,
they've got their RV, but it's next to the house and be pushed back from the front of the house. I don't, you don't want. It's an idea.
Yeah.
It kind of keeping clean. People aren't parking them right in the front yard or in their.
Okay. I sense a waning in the participation on the topic. Are we reaching, do you want to put it on?
We're getting there, but I think we're bringing up different things every time. Like that's new. It's good to have Scott here for just to know that you guys actually listen to some of the stuff that we talk about.
Mhm.
So we brought that up all on our own.
Good to have
We
your input.
just all on
Oh,
the same page, that's all.
Measured in our cup.
So, yeah.
Okay. One other comment?
I agree, there should be a fee, but I think it should be uniform for everybody. Because one person's paying $300 and another person over here is paying $50, and it's still the same end result. So I think there should be a fair fee. It shouldn't be so huge that.
I kind of was looking at it if you had
It's way the
If you had a property split and you had a separate home there, they would have their own property taxes that they would be paying anyways. And it kind of takes away from the original property and the size and what they're paying for. So if you had higher property taxes, well, they have more space, so you're probably gonna have more room for your ADU to occupy.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right.
It's a percentage thing, I don't know. All suggestions.
Well,
So if they're low income and they meet the requirements, can they get that 10% cut down?
Whatever their property taxes are.
I'm just
Whatever the
being
property
smart
tax
aleck.
is, yes, that would make sense.
well,
That was snarky, I'm just being snarky.
well,
I think one of the things, and I can't remember if I read it in here or if it was something else, but a limit of one
family.
property.
It says one family in
Is that what
here.
it says?
It doesn't say like one person or, what.
A couple of other things that again, I don't know exactly where I've heard them, but I think in some counties, it was reported that it's allowed for a certain person in the family or a certain individual, and then once that individual either moves or passes away, then it's all gone, it needs to go away. And you can't just pass it on to the next person without some kind of
Recertification.
yeah. And then the other thought I had was I don't know if you want the idea of that the residence and property has to be in compliance with all city codes before an additional dwelling unit can be allowed. So that if you've got somebody that's already got a problem property and now they're asking for additional special conditions for an RV, that they have to have the main house and property already in compliance with. I don't know, just a thought. I just don't know if you want to add additional special allowances if somebody's already has problems going on their property.
So we can extract from this conversation some of the key thoughts and insights, I would hope.
There has been some mention when we brought it up to the city planner, is he said he recommended that we check into fire codes and there was another one, maybe electrical, I'm not sure, as far as what the state requirements are in order to, if there's anything there that we need to be aware of to make sure that we're staying within state codes. I haven't done any of that research, but if council wants me to, I'd be happy to check into it.
Council care to have her research that more fully? Okay, we get an affirmation on that. Another comment?
Yes.
Well, I kind of have two. The fire code thing, there's RVs all over the state, out in the woods, next door to people's houses and everything else, and there's no fire code thing for that. And another thing is that restricting the type of people that live in are going to be there, like, I don't know, you've got vets coming back from overseas that maybe have PTSD, that might want to stay with their parents and they may not be old. What kind of restrictions are you going to put on the type of people that you're going to allow to live there, or are there any? Or is it just going to be family members?
And is it gonna be just one person living in the RV?
Well,
Are
this
we
one
gonna?
says you can have a family.
Well, that's.
Yeah, can you have a
county.
family of 6 living in an RV? I mean, how do you, I mean, at some point,
You'd have to set it up
You know
like
what
a
I mean?
hotel.
We all have different
You have
comfort
a sleep
levels.
bed, You get,
That's the
maximum
problem.
2 people if you have.
Having to
Okay.
add something new, you gotta be specific, because they're gonna,
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
they'll find that one
You
thing.
missed
that you
these
didn't
last two
figure out.
Sure
meetings.
did.
This was interesting.
yeah. Well, it's kind of ominous. Well, I did miss the previous 2 meetings. I haven't given the minutes enough attention yet. But I would inject here that I've spoken to Mr. Teitzel, who is the Lewis County Building Code Enforcement official. And following up on your observation, Donna, the county is rampant, the use of RVs and such. And where they are, have become aware of violations, like you say, the fire codes and such, it is a problem. They do have fire codes. If you talk to Mr. Teitzel, and he says it is an epidemic in Lewis County, and they cannot hire enough building inspectors to be code enforcement officers. And so Lewis County is suffering from that phenomenon. And it's, I think, as he would probably say, I don't put words in his mouth, but he's frustrated. And I know Lewis County commissioners are frustrated. So I would throw that out there as we could get Mr. Teitzel to come in. I know he's helped the city when we had to decide if there's something out of compliance or not, just by looking at it. He could probably come and give insights on it, but I would offer that to the council for some sort of concern about if you open a certain door and the cow gets out or the foot is in the door, it's hard to close that door after the fact. Whatever that did first. So I've got
It's hard to get the cow back in.
Yeah,
Thank you.
right. Yeah,
As we
exactly.
can see with our code enforcement issues that we already have, that is,
Right. There is a reason why these things are in our ordinances. And I think we're all adept enough to know why those are in there. But anyway, this is very productive, I think, with the input from the public. It's almost a public hearing on the matter. So, but since I get to moderate these council meetings, any other thoughts, comments from members of the council? You'll see it again on our future agendas.
Did you have any requests for fencing? No, okay.
Nothing yet. Okay.
I'm not, no.
Then let's advance to item number 9, seeing the hour. Let's have a brief discussion regarding the paving project.
Okay, so similar to what the church is doing, the church is going to contact the contractor and try to get a side paving project. They're going to pave the rest of their area over there, and they're hoping to be able to get a good deal and everything, right? So I was interested in the city doing the same thing. If they're here on A working, I'd like to talk to them and see if we can get a good deal on the strip of A between 9th and 8th in front of the Mason Lodge, because that's like, I mean, it's horrible. It's a horrible stretch. You know, we've got gravel on it now.
Getting worse, too.
But I'd like to see what it would cost if it was in our budget, which it should be. We've got a good amount of money in between the STP funds and our personal budget, maybe to get that block taken care of while they're already on A. And so I don't have any numbers yet, but I wanted to just kind of get a nod from the council. It's something that they're interested in doing, so that if a contract was presented to you in 2 or 4 weeks, it wouldn't be a surprise.
I'm happy. I think that would be fabulous to look into.
Section of town is terrible,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, what are
I'd be all good to see what the quote came back at. Yeah.
Okay.
what are you gonna do when people come in and say, well, you did A, how come you didn't do B?
Might as well do Annandon's Road too.
Yeah, so how about,
They've been doing that for years. They're always gonna do that.
yeah,
I think we
it's
just
part
let
of
the
the
cow
program.
out again.
Well,
We have a hit list of streets that was put together, and this one is on that list.
is one of the top priorities.
You don't put it on the list.
So they're already on A, so
Well, that was good thinking. Thank you.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
All right. So,
great.
I gathered a consensus of that, so we'll research it and get
Okay.
back with you. Don't need a
And
motion,
then-
I don't think. Do you? Yeah.
And then Mayor, there were these letters for the confirmations that we haven't talked
Yeah,
about.
they're not on the agenda,
Okay.
and
Never mind.
I know the council likes to have them present, and it was short notice for them. So next council meeting. I am confident we'll have a forum for the park board meeting on Monday.
Okay.
So thank you for doing that. All right, so we've worked our way through our 9 agenda items. We'll conclude with our public comment, and I would anticipate we have at least one, or willing to. Two. Okay, then we'll proceed with that.
Cindy Radcliffe.
Okay, before we proceed, however, as you're approaching the podium, I think I've expressed this a goodly number of times over the years. The public comment is an opportunity. You have 3 minutes per council guidelines. There are established policies throughout the state of Washington. But it's the mayor's responsibility to ensure the comments are civil, respectful, don't impugn, disrespect, or express any derogatory comments about an elected official whose meeting this is. So if I perceive that it reaches that point, I will interrupt the public comment, just in case there was uncertainty in that regard. So with that, let's proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Cindy Radcliffe, 1020 7th Street, and by the way, I'm not the only person that has called names in these things. I believe the mayor has also called names in the past. So thank you for that lecture again and for that reminder.
You're welcome.
The mayor's comments earlier about the city were unacceptable, and to me they were offensive. Mr. Smith, this city has functioned for 100 years before you got here. It will function for another 100 years after you leave. And for you to refer to the previous administrations as good old boys behind the barn making the decisions, that was unprofessional and unwarranted. Those fine gentlemen on that wall over there, they deserve your respect, and if nothing else, for their service to this community. And for you to make light of what they have done and, say, oh, well, they just went behind the barn and did a handshake, that wasn't very nice and it was rude. And in addition, to be threatened with removal just because I asked you not to interrupt my comments weren't being offensive. I didn't call anybody a name. I didn't call anybody stupid or ignorant. So for you to threaten me for removal just because you didn't like what I was saying, again, unprofessional and unwarranted.
Excellent. Okay, next.
That's it.
Oh, I thought there were two.
Well, they crossed their name off.
Oh, okay. Very good. Well, thank you. We appreciate everyone in attendance and what we've heard and the ground we've covered. So with that, we'll officially adjourn this meeting at 8:02 p.m.